Proponisi webinar. It's great to have you with us here today. My name is Michael Tamer, and the subject today is a subject that we have all talked about a billion times, and something that has been affecting the industry for decades and decades. And the question is, has everything been decided on it? Is there anything new with which we can do with it? Is it something that we just have to accept? Is it something that we can actually make a change to? And so I guess my pitch to you here today is that I think there is some things that you can do, and I think there's some things that you can do right away. And I'm going to tell you up front that I don't have a million new ideas. Perhaps I'll communicate a collection of thoughts or concepts or some to-dos that you might be able to walk away with and do something with based on the experience that we've had with our customers. But this is an issue that's worth 45 minutes. And whether it's worth 45 minutes once every 3 years because you just have not been able to overcome it, or it's an issue that is just banging away on your brain. But one thing I will say about this issue, and if you've listened to any of my podcasts before, you'll note that in my podcast I talk a lot about the fact that, how do I make a difference? How do I stand out? How do I do something in my organization that gets me a raise, that gets me a bonus, that gets me more responsibility, and gets me a super cool title? Well, it's making an impact on your organization. And there's probably no better place to make an impact on your organization than turnover. So if you were the person in your organization that fixed turnover or dramatically changed turnover, or you were the turnover expert in your company, I think that goes a long way to helping you be more successful. Obviously, it makes your company more successful. It makes your people more successful. And most important of all, it makes your customers more successful because the people that are on the phone are experienced, they're engaged, they're excited, they're talented, they're skilled, and they don't have one foot out the door. So today we're going to talk about turnover, and we're going to talk about it through a different filter or a different lens. But for those that don't know me very well, and maybe this is your first webinar with me, I have a podcast called the Contact Center Coach Podcast. I think there's 140 different podcasts out there on every area, on every subject that you could think of. They're all about 17 to 22 minutes long. It's just me speaking, but it's designed to be a quick, focused, intense, purposeful, hopefully a little bit unique, hopefully engaging, maybe even a little bit funny opportunity for us to hit the key areas or areas of leadership. And it covers all areas of leadership. And so I would encourage you to go on whatever your podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts on, Spotify or Apple or whatever one it is, and pick it up and take a listen, or just look at what's in the library and find one that you like. I always tell people, if you listen to the first one and you hate it, listen to a second one. If you hate the second one, don't tell anyone about it. But if you like it, pass it on and let some other people hear it. I will say that I think it's a great tool, especially for new and upcoming leaders in your organization or people that are thinking about being a leader, because being a leader requires a different thought process. It requires a different lens at which you look at things and how you focus and where you attempt to put your focus. And let's face it, it's very easy to walk into any organization and find a problem, find multiple problems. And I'm sure you have a bunch of them going on in your organization. Successful people, successful organizations, people that grow, that get more responsibility, that get more money, that get more bonuses, they can take a look at the problems, focus on them, pick the right priority, and go tackle the ones that they've got an opportunity for success. The reason that I'm talking to you is because we would love to work with you. We would love to have you take a look at our technology and the things that we do in the contact center. We believe we've got a suite of solutions focused on voice of the customer, quality monitoring, training, and engagement that collectively work to deal with many of the problems that we're going to talk about here today. I'm not going to give you a demo today. You're not going to see a demonstration of our technology. I'd be lying if I didn't say my dream would be that you'd reach out to us and allow us to share with you what we might be able to do in your organization after learning what it is you do. But this is not a product pitch. We're going to focus on turnover and see whether we can come up with some solutions and something that you might take your pen out, write it down, and make use of. So let's get started. Turnover is one of those subjects that everybody has. And I don't know what your number is, but my guess is you know your number. So that number ranges depending on, could range 5%. Maybe you're one of these people that has 3%. If you are, I guess you're probably not on this webinar. But this can range up to 75%. The average, I believe, in the industry right now is 25%. And the first thing that everybody talks about when we talk about turnover is the cost to replace someone. And you'll hear that from vendors all the time. Hey, this costs a lot of money to replace them. And that number can range from $5,000 to $17,000 or whatever that number is when you talk about what is it going to take to replace someone. But the ongoing impact, the drain on your organization, the drain on your great people, the fact that there's a revolving door going on in your organization is just something that affects everything, morale and customer experience and burnout. And it does tell a story. Your individual turnover tells a story that maybe you already know all the answers to this story. What I want to do is I'm going to use a different filter today. The filter I'm going to use today is I'm going to try to walk us down through the most damaging types of attrition and just look at them individually. And my guess is you probably have all of them. Or maybe you don't. Maybe you just have 2 or 3 of them. But I want to talk at all of them because all of them look at a different angle and they look at a different perspective. And most importantly, they occur at different times throughout the employee journey. And my hope is that I might say something that you go, aha, that makes sense. But we're going to look at the types of turnover that we have, why they happen, and then what to do about them, which of course is, I think, the reason that you're here. You don't need somebody to tell you that it's a problem. You're looking for some answers or some solutions. So let's go ahead and get started and see what we can do. So first up is probably the most significant one, and the one that since COVID and post-COVID has been the most dramatic, and that's what we call ghost turnover. Agents who disappear during training or early days. And we hear this over and over again from our clients. And that is that they can almost give the day at which people leave. It's 89 days or 76 days or 107 days or whatever that time period is. They've got a target and a date when they lose people, and they lose a significant amount of people. We've also seen in this process that people are leaving in droves during nesting. We've seen people leave. 50% of a training class leave in the middle of training. Or 30% of the people not even show up to training. And so this ghost turnover, this turnover that occurs in the early stages, if that's you, my guess is you've looked at a number of different ways to look at that. Again, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to hit some ones you've probably already heard of, but my goal here is to try to get something that you can write down, that you can walk away and say, you know what, that was worth it. There's some value here. I can do something with that. Well, our first step is that we believe that you have to set expectations before day one. And I know the answer is hiring, because it's an old expression. It's kind of a painful expression, but kind of garbage in, garbage out. If you've got a broken hiring process, then you're going to be bringing people on that are going to affect your ability to be successful, and people that aren't going to stick around. And depending on your circumstances, that can be very, very difficult for you. So I want to have a strategy. Do you have a strategy before they ever enter the building? Do you have a strategy and made changes, or in the process of making changes before they even get to you? So some examples of some things that you can do. You need to hire using trainers or employees. If you've never taken trainers out of training and rotated them through hiring, you should. We're going to find out, and what you already know is that trainers can tell pretty quickly who's going to make it, who's not. And my guess is you probably have some pools going on with the trainers. And I don't think I've ever met a trainer that I've asked, but I didn't say, how long does it take you to know whether this person's going to make it or not? And they usually say they can tell within a day. Some people can tell within 4 or 5 hours. Now, whether they make it, whether they're going to be successful, whether they're going to leave, those are 2 different circumstances. But trainers have very good visibility into what's going on. And then the second use is the use of employees, is actually using employees in your training process. And yes, I know that takes them off the phone. And yes, I know that's going to cost you contact center minutes. But putting employees in a room, put 3 or 4 employees in a room to interview people, they'll be able to tell you pretty quickly whether that person's going to make it. And the second thing that they do is that also helps you begin what I call the rush. And that is, if you were ever in college and ever rushed a fraternity or a sorority, it's a different style. They're bringing people in, they're trying to entice people in, but at the same time, they're also trying to find a match. And depending on the university that you went to, some fraternities were studying fraternities or sports fraternities or music fraternities or Christian fraternities. The same thing with sororities. They had something about them that was unique or different, or that made them kind of fit. And for your organization, it may just be like you have to be crazy hard worker and be able to work in high stress situations, and you're the kind of person that gets bored really easily, and so things need to be really active. So the higher the queue, the longer you keep people around. Those are the kind of rush terminology that I'm looking for. But your employees, the ones that are successful, the ones that have stuck around, they know the kind of people that fit. They know the kind of people that will work in your organization. And to that end, you also want to be starting your culture very early. You want to start your culture in your welcome letter. You want to start your culture in multiple different welcome letters. I mean, hopefully that when somebody comes on board and they're going to start in 2 weeks, that you're doing something with them every day. There's some sort of a connection. There's some sort of a reach out. There's something going on that gets them into the building, that begins to set their expectations for what's going to happen when they walk into training, so that they're not shocked, they're not surprised, they're not timid, they don't have an enormous amount of trepidation, they're actually ready to go. And this is where you set the expectations. This is where you tell them up front, hey, this is what it's going to be like. This is what the hours are going to be like. This is when we're going to go for breaks. This is when we're going to have lunch. This is when we're going to have our first bagel hour, or when you're going to get on the phones, or whatever the components are. The more that you can tell them up front, the better chance that you got that you put them into a position to be successful. Now, yes, you do run the risk, oh my, maybe they won't show up. I'm not saying that I want you to scare them or scare them straight, or create some sort of an environment where that you just bludgeon them to the point where they've got to decide whether they even want to show up or not. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about beginning to build a relationship with them before they even get into the building. And then finally, you have to minimize your reality. I've run into companies where they're so desperate for people that they don't even interview the people. If they're come for the job, they're just hoping they're going to show up. And I know that's crazy town, but there are some realities that you have to work with. Maybe you work in an area or location that's very difficult to get people, and you've struggled to get the kind of type and quality of people, and so you end up reducing your requirements, or easing up on them, or looking the other way, or just having to compromise the things that you need to do. I recognize the fact that many of you are in a reality that you have to compromise. And I recognize and understand that with that compromise, you can't get all the things that you want. It's hard to reject people. Well, again, being a leader, you recognize what your reality is. You look at the things that you've got to compromise, and you begin to pick the ones that you're not going to compromise on. You begin to try to build a list of things that, even in my most desperate circumstances, I would rather not have this particular quality rather than have it and just have a warm body. And those are ways that you begin you're going to lose some people in that hiring process. It's going to reduce the numbers there, but it's going to keep you from spending a whole bunch of money on others. And again, as numbers ebb and flow, as you begin to build some responsibility, some structure to those realities that you're going to have to live with, and the ones that you won't live with, the ones that you won't compromise on, you begin to build a better circumstance and a better shot at people sticking around and getting into your training. Remember, we've now spent a whole bunch of time, and we haven't even had these people show up in the building. But once we do get them in the building, we need to begin to build connection from the start. Every day we have to build connection. And you can see in the third point there, we're trying to connect them to 4 things. We're trying to connect them to the company, to their peers, to your customers, and to their success. And connection is everything. We need to connect them to the company. They need to begin to feel a part of it. They need to begin to feel that, hey, you know what? I belong here. This is where I'm supposed to be. I fit. I'm not unique. I'm not different. I fit. And one of the ways that you show them that they fit is if in the third day they're struggling and they don't know what's going on, your ability to be able to recognize the fact, hey, everybody struggled on the third day. Everybody had these problems. Everybody had these challenges. Everybody felt the way that you did. Or maybe they're ahead of the game in certain areas, but behind in others. Let them know where they're ahead. Show them how they fit. Show them how their personality, how their prospects for success, how their experiences fit. But we also need to connect them. We also need to connect them to their peers. I've never met anyone that went through training that doesn't still remember the people that they were in training a long time ago. And maybe they're not best of friends, but they know who they are. And maybe they're the ones that, maybe you're the one that says, you know what, I'm the last person in my training class. I'm the only one that made it. I've been here 4 years or 10 years or 20 years. I'm the only one left in my training class. Or you know what, I still remember Susie from my training class. She's now in marketing. Or Susie's still on the floor. That connection to peers, making a connection with somebody that they're going to remember that they can go through this with. You know, when somebody goes to camp and they build those lifelong memories and they build those lifelong connections, one of the key components of connecting those people when your kids go to camp, it's not the camp itself, it's the miserable bus ride that it took them to get there. Because they're in this shared misery, they're in this circumstance, and they begin to build bonds because they all went through that. Well, that may be the same way that it is in training or nesting, or who knows, that might be your culture out on the floor, that, hey, we're just the kind of people that can take it. But the point is that we're trying to make them connected. And of course, we obviously want to connect them to their customers. They need to see their customers as their driving point of the reason that they exist, the reason that they go through the pain, the reason that they begin to build skills to overcome challenges or problems. And by the way, those skills that they can overcome challenges and problems are anger, or people that are upset, or people that are stressed, or people that feel wrong. Those same kind of skills and tools can be used in their personal life, that they can make use of and do something with that will help them be more successful in their day-to-day life. And listen to your trainers. Listen to your trainers, because your trainer knows who's going. Your trainers will know very early on who's going to struggle, who's going to have a problem, who's going to leave. But the trainers may not have the time to do something about it. You may need to have some people, some rescue people in your organization that rescue very early, in the same way that you rescue customers and you transfer to a rescue queue, or you transfer to someone that's going to overcome the problems, or people that are leaving, you know, have some sort of attrition in your customers. You may want to have this same sort of a save queue for the people that are on the floor, or not people that are on the floor, people that are in your training, and begin to recognize who they are. And then we've talked about connecting them to their peers, but I cannot begin to tell you how important it is for them to have a buddy or a mentor or somebody that they can connect with really early. Maybe it's somebody that's on the floor. Again, the person on the floor comes and stops in and says hello and checks in with them. Maybe that's someone that's working with them. And I know you probably have coaches and people that are involved with them, but anything that you can do to create a buddy. If you've ever listened to any of my podcasts, you've heard me say it 100 times. You don't need 7 friends to make it through high school, but you do need at least one. You need somebody to protect you from the bullies and the mean girls. You've got to have that one person. You can't make it through high school without one friend, but you don't need more than one. It's the same way in a contact center. It's the same way in training and nesting and first days on the floor and every day on the floor. You got to have a buddy. You got to have somebody that you're connected to. There has to be another reason that you're showing up for work besides just the work that you're doing. And again, that doesn't mean that people can't make it without having a friend. But you know what? It dramatically improves, like crazy improves, your ability to be successful and keep people around if they have some sort of a friend. Next up is burnout, turnover. You know, and I know that this is a big one, and this is one that's always a struggle, because it's very, very hard to overcome burnout, because burnout could be for 100 different reasons. Burnout could be simply because you have high turnover. And because you have high turnover, your queues never go down. And from the time that the doors open till they close, it's just a race. And it's constant pressure and it's constant queues, and it never lets up. And so your turnover has created more turnover, and you're in this vicious cycle that you can't seem to get out of. And so how do I overcome burnout? Well, it starts with hiring people that are wired for this pace. Asking the questions, again, that's embracing your reality and looking for the kind of people that work in those environments. And you say, well, you don't understand, Michael, my contact center, it's just the most difficult thing you've ever seen. The people are customers hate us. It's very, very difficult. It's wildly, wildly stressful, and we have this burnout. Well, you do, but there are people that thrive in those environments. In the same way that there are people that work in sewers or work in some of these crazy hard jobs, you know, they're built for it. It's what they want to do. They never grew up and said, hey, I want to work in sewers or I want to work in contact centers, but they just fit. It's their personality. It's the way they work. They don't want to be bored. They want to be challenged. They like the excitement. They like overcoming the objections. And so hiring people that fit into this, again, it goes back to that fraternity, sorority component. We're trying to find people that work in those environments. And that goes back to, again, the questions that you're asking early, or beginning to help people to build a skill in something that maybe they didn't even know that they liked, but they find out that they like it. That they weren't people that would be able to overcome the challenges that you have, but they work in that environment. There are some things that you can work on, though. You can work on fatigue. And the first part of fatigue is recognizing fatigue. And where do you see the fatigue? Does the fatigue come after multiple different calls of the same type? Does the fatigue occur at the same time each week? Are they having fatigue because there's something that's going on outside of the company? You know, a lot of people get sick. They feel sick. They have to work. And they keep working, but they're so sick that when they're well, they feel so miserable because they remember the fact that they were sick, connected with your company, and then they just want to leave. And your ability to acknowledge and recognize and participate and empathize with their sickness and see that coming and be able to overcome that and relate to them because you know them, because you understand them, allows you to do that. Every contact center is always looking for volunteers to go offline and do some different things. And sometimes that's some of the better ways that you can accomplish this, is to rotate through and have some sort of break. You know what? One of the things that works really well in a contact center is mystery, which is that you never know what's going to happen. So all of a sudden walking over to someone saying, hey, you can take an hour off. Just go ahead and go. You get an hour off. We're going to pay you, but just go take an hour off. Creates a mystery that you never know who the person might be that's going to get some time off. And yes, you can rotate it through. And yes, you might be able to particularly pick people that you think are going through some sort of fatigue where you might be able to help them, or 15 minutes off or 20 minutes off, or take an extra break, or come sit down with me, or whatever it is. Look for ways to avoid tasks, you know, to avoid overload, and try to find some ways that you might be able to do some different things that you can do. And yes, I understand we're talking about a contact center. You don't have a single minute. You don't even have a minute to coach them, let alone take them off the phones. But when you begin to look at what it costs you, there's in certain instances where you just can't afford not to invest in that. And then all the coaching that you can do, all the engagement that you can do, all the empathy that you can show and share, especially if you're a leader that's been in this position before. This is something you've done, something you understand, something you can relate to. Now, being someone that walks around and just tells them stories, and then you go back and have lunch while they're chained to their desk, isn't necessarily always the way to do it. But the fact that you've done it before, the fact that you've made it through, should give them confidence that it can be done, that they can make it through too, that they have the ability to overcome and work their way through that. And the way that you get through burnout ultimately is two things occur. One, you become successful. And there's nothing that overcomes burnout better than success. Success in the areas. Do you really know the areas that your frontline is dealing with? Do you actually know the areas that are keeping them from being successful? Because if you do, you need to be working with them to show them that when they accomplish those things, they can have that success. And success will overcome burnout because people have a tendency to want to do things that they're successful at. And so if you can show them ways that they're successful, if you can help them to become more successful, it's crazy, but people don't get quite as burned out when they look at the end of the day and they go, wow, look what I accomplished. I was better today than I was yesterday. I accomplished something that I've never done before. I overcame a particular challenge that I've never done before. I helped Jane or Fred or Susie overcome something, and I could hear it in their voice. And you know what? I kept 4 people from crying today. Who else could do that? There's so many cool things that go on. If you can find them, if you can focus on them, if you can do something with them to help your people overcome burnout. And then the final thing that you're doing is you're embracing the suck. And that is quite simply not hiding from the fact that it is monotonous, that it is stressful, that it is redundant, that it is one of those jobs that can be crazily painful. But that's okay because we're all in it together. Because that's what we do. We're crazy people. We work in this job in this circumstance under this, and this is who we are. And maybe those are not the right words for you to use, but you get the point. And that is that we're all in this together. We're all working together. There's all sorts of people that are doing this, have been doing this for a while, and they're going to continue to do this because we're good at this. And this is what we do, and this is how we do it. Next up is a mismatched fit turnover, which is the right person in the wrong seat. And I know you have this, which is that somebody figures out, I just don't fit here. This is not for me. And I don't belong here. And unfortunately, some people find that out in 60 days, which is why we should have hired them better or trained them better. But this is one that's very difficult to overcome when someone comes to the realization that they don't fit. And that's, again, back to that fraternity and sorority concept when you're hiring them, because that helps you to understand what it is you're supposed to be doing. And then also there's some circumstances where it's just their season. They've got a season that they're in, got a certain amount of time that they want to be there. It's, again, something that you probably could find out earlier based on your relationship, based on your connections. And then, of course, ultimately, it comes down to understanding what their goals are, because sometimes someone may perceive that they have a mismatch fit, but the reality is that they don't have a mismatch fit. They actually fit very well for whatever the length of the season is that they're supposed to be with you for. And so sometimes when you can do that, you can create an environment that will keep them around longer. How big is your contact center? Is it 300, 500, 600, 700, 1,000 people? Keeping people around for a couple weeks more, for a month longer than what you have today, can have massive impact if you have high turnover. So our goal is to try to keep people around longer, even if they are a mismatched fit. And so you're obviously doing a better job with profiles, making sure they understand what the job is. But sometimes also it's not a job fit, it's more of a cultural fit. They don't feel like they fit in. And they do fit in. You just haven't found the person or buddy or purpose or a goal for them or strategies for them or targets for them or challenges for them that work in their environment. Most people didn't grow up saying, hey, I want to be a contact center rep. They wanted to be president of the United States or an actress or an actor, or they're going to be a professional baseball player, whatever that role is that they've decided that they want to do. They didn't grow up thinking they wanted to be in a contact center. They didn't grow up thinking they wanted to be in a contact center, then they already don't fit. But they're there, they're working. Hopefully they're successful. Hopefully they're finding some things that they're doing well. You'd be surprised how long someone will stay in a job that's not ultimately what they want to do, but they recognize the fact that the company's not perfect, the job's not perfect, but they like some of the people that they work for. They really do love helping customers. And they're actually a little smarter today than they were when they started. And so for right now, because they get to leave early, or they've got a good shift, or they don't have to stress about the job when they're done, or they're playing softball at night, so it just kind of works for them. People will stay in season for a little bit longer, even if there is a mismatched fit with who they are. Next up is disengaged turnover. They check out before they check out. And we see this a lot with people that are working from home. Matter of fact, we see this a ton with people that are working from home, which is that they're there, they're doing it, but they're just not engaged. And perhaps their lack of engagement comes from the repetition or the stress, or the high volume of calls that you've got, the queues that are really hard, but they just become disengaged. They stop trying. And the moment that you say disengaged, that immediately goes to, what is your engagement strategy? How engaging are you with this employee? How much time are you spending engaging with them? How much time are you finding them doing something right? There are reps that are taking, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of calls each week. And there are some successes in there. There are wins. There are places where they've overcome. There are spectacular things that they've done. There are funny things that they've done. There are engaging circumstances where they've got a story they want to share, but you've got to give them someone to share it with them. You've got to find ways to celebrate those and to recognize those and to acknowledge those. And that comes from feedback. And whether you're using technology for that feedback or people for that feedback, the more feedback that you can give them, the more ways that you can show them how they're being successful, and to show them the impact that they're having on your company, on their peers, on their customers, on their legacy in your organization, the better chance you've got of having some sort of engagement. Are you engaging your employees? Is it something that you have a strategy on? Is it something you can say, you know what, we are? Or have you fallen into the contact center trap that, you know what, we just don't have time to do all that stuff. We've got it all, but we're not using any of it because we just don't have time. We've got to get them on the phone and get them to the next call. And one of the ways that you engage and that you overcome disengagement is that you start this really early. You start this again before they've been hired. You engage them. You engage them in training. You engage them in nesting. You engage them in their early days. And once they're out on the floor, you don't stop engaging them. You continue to engage them. They have so much to connect on. They have so many different experiences. They have so many ways that a thumbs up, a smile, a job well done, a challenge, some sort of a gift, some sort of recognition, some sort of a letter, whatever it may be, ways that you can acknowledge what it is they're doing. If you're working in a contact center and you're working in a building and there's 300 or 700 people there, or you're working out of your house, it's really hard to be seen. It's really hard not to feel like a number, like nobody cares. And if no one cares, why should I care? If no one's really watching me, why should I care? Now, I know that technology is watching me because it catches me doing things wrong all the time, and we always point those out. And if I miss something in compliance, they're right there. But am I really being seen? Am I really being heard? That's what affects disengaged turnover and the kind of things that you want to be able to overcome and look for ways to do that. I know you know the answer to this question. Are you engaging with your employees? I'm betting that you need to engage with your employees 4 to 5 times more than you are right now. And for some of you, that may be 8 times more than you are right now. Because the more that you engage with them, the more that you connect with them, the more that you as a company reach out to them and acknowledge and appreciate and challenge and coach and discipline, the more times that you do that, the more that your employee recognizes and has some purpose and recognizes, hey, somebody's watching me, somebody knows what I'm doing, somebody's paying attention. And it makes it much, much harder for these people to disengage. Next up is a subject attached to disengage that I want to make sure that you don't miss. And that is, if you listen to my podcast before, you've heard this before. I look at a contact center as having 3 components of people: roses, daisies, and weeds. Roses are our best employees. They're the ones that stand out. They're the ones that do the very best that they can do. We have a tendency, just like roses. Roses are a beautiful flower. They're the top flower, but they require a lot of effort. They require a lot of fertilizer. They require a lot of time to care for them. But tendency with roses to reward them. Best this, best that. Congratulations on this. But roses need to be challenged. If you want to engage a rose, challenge them. Yes, it's great that they get rewards and all those kind of things, but roses need to be challenged. If you want them to stick around, you need to give them a challenge. They're the ones that affect your AHT. They're the ones that set the new standards for you. They're the ones that set the new goals. They're the ones that if you've got a problem, give it to them. If you want to find a better way to work through a particular transaction, or you've got a new transaction that's coming on, and you want to begin to build the skills that help people to do that, they're the ones to teach your new hires. They're the ones that help you do it. Challenge them. Give them a challenge. Roses want to be challenged. Daisies, beautiful flower. Very simple to grow. Don't require a lot of fertilizer at all. But we have a tendency with daisies to ignore them. And daisies usually represent about 60% of your organization. They're about 60%. You have about 20%, 20 or 30%, 50 again, depending on your numbers, that are your roses, and 20 or 30% that are your weeds. You've got this daisies in the middle. We ignore them. We ignore them because we're focused on the reward, the roses, telling them how wonderful they are, and the weeds, trying to figure out how to get them out of the company or telling them how bad they are. We've got to find different ways to reward this group. And I promise you right now, you don't have best average employee of the month. You just don't think that way, but you should. We have to find ways to reward this group. If you want to engage your daisies, you got to find ways to reward and recognize their little increments of success, because you can't live without them. They're the majority of your organization. And then finally, we have the weeds. And we have a tendency to punish this group. And if you're a frontline leader, you spend a lot of time walking people through that punishment process or the PIP process or whatever it is you're doing. And what's sad is you spend more time talking to them and coaching them in the PIP process than you ever did when they were working with you on the floor. And I know, yes, many of them, we're trying to give them back to the community as quickly as we can. But the reality is, if we're going to have a successful organization, we come to embrace and we come to recognize that the most successful organization is always going to have roses, daisies, and weeds. Right now in the National Basketball Association, they're in the playoffs, and someone's going to be the best team in the NBA. They're going to be the champions. And on that team, I think they have 12 players. Well, of those 12 players, those 12 professional players that are the champions of the league, they're going to have some rosies, some daisies, and some weeds. And those people that are the weeds in that organization are the best basketball players in the world. Or another way to look at it is that in the Olympic downhill skiing race, I think they've got 40 or 45 competitors. That 45th competitor, which is a weed in that environment, is better than any of us on this particular podcast and better than most everybody else, the 46th and 47th person in the world that can ski. But in that environment, they're a weed. How do you know you're successful? You know you're successful when your weeds are better than everybody else's roses, whether that be your team or whether that be your company. And that's what you're looking for, is to create an environment where your weeds are better than everybody else's roses. That's when you know you're there. That also means that you have to recognize, and we have to engage, we have to find ways to reward and be able to succeed and help people and celebrate even the weeds and the things that they do well. Next up is a toxic culture. And they didn't quit the job, they quit the manager. And this is basically a simple question. Would you stay under this leadership? And maybe it's not you because you're over it, but maybe there are however many supervisors and a couple that they just don't fit. And would you stay there? And your ability to recognize and see that goes a long way towards changing the toxic culture you may have in your organization. You got to coach your leaders. You can't just hope that they do well. Most leaders start from within the contact center. They don't have a lot of training, a lot of expertise, and maybe you've had training for a while. We spend a lot of time with our clients in this area trying to coach. Listening to my Contact Center Coach podcast is a great way to begin to build their skills. But we need to really track their behaviors, not just the metrics, not just what they're getting out, but how is it affecting the individual? And we need to act fast on toxic patterns. Maybe you need to fire someone. Maybe there's somebody that's toxic, that's a coach that's screwing up your entire contact center. Get rid of them. Maybe there's more than one. Your ability to hold on to people that are creating the toxic culture creates an environment that it's very, very hard to hold on to people, because what about me? What's that going to be when that happens to me? Do you measure turnover by the individual supervisors that you have? Do you find out whether sometimes the toxic culture is not that they're mean or they're Darth Vader? The toxic culture is they don't engage, or they don't know how to engage, or they don't know how to express empathy. They're really good with understanding what it is when they've got a problem, but they're just not able to connect. Nobody's sticking around because of them. And I like this last statement for contact centers. Don't aim for perfect, aim for better. I mean, it's really the issue with turnover. I mean, you're probably not going to eliminate all your turnover, but it doesn't have to be the number that it is. You can aim for better. You can aim to be better than you are. You can aim for better with your coaches. You can aim for better in the type of people that you have that are leaders, that they have better skills and better capability to overcome things. And maybe you're not a great leader yourself. Maybe you've got to do a better job of modeling what it is on how to connect and help with the culture. And get an assessment. Maybe you're the person that's creating part of the culture and the problem is me. And maybe just a quick assessment of some things that you could do or you could change. Again, the higher you up in the organization, your decisions, your actions, the things that you do roll down to everyone else. And so sometimes the fastest way to make a change to your culture, your toxic culture, is take a good look at your leaders and make a change in between. Maybe that person that you have that's your number two, that's really tough because you're really kind of a people person, that they're doing the tough job. Maybe they're a little too tough. or maybe they're particularly tough in this area. Maybe you could dial that back and maybe that'll change. The sixth one is just the silent suffering turnover. No complaints, just a resignation letter, right? They're there, and all of a sudden, poof, they're gone, and you don't really know why, because you've had some really great conversations with them in the 15 minutes or the 30 minutes that you sit down with them, whatever the number of times that is, and their scores are pretty good. And you know what? Quite frankly, they're a little bit of a daisy, or they're a rose, and I don't really have to spend a lot of time with them because they're just kind of okay. But I'm kind of shocked that they left. As a vendor, we find that, when that happens every once in a while to a vendor, and they lose a client that they thought they knew, and they realize, you know what, I really didn't spend a lot of time with that client. I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't spend enough time checking in with them to find out that there was something going on. And you've got to do that with pulse checks. You've got to stay in contact with people. You've got to find out what's going on, but you have to not only find out, but you've got to ask them questions. And you got to get to the real issues and have real talk and create environments where they can talk and ask questions that really count. With AI and all of its capabilities, the number of questions you can get to talk about a particular area are unending. And there are creative new ways that you can ask questions and find out about people and talk to them about different things. And so you need to do that in order to overcome this silent suffering that's going on. And we need to be consistent about it. And I cannot tell you the number of organizations that I've counseled that I've tried to express upon them that you can't stop coaching sessions. Even if you're busy, you have to find a way to have your coaching sessions. Now, I recognize and understand that sometimes you can't have your coaching session that day, but you should never miss a coaching session in a week. It should never happen. You have to find some sort of a way to make those coaching sessions occur, even if you have to pay that employee overtime to stay so you can have the coaching session because it's after their hours and it didn't affect your queue, but it costs you more money. You've got to have the coaching sessions. You've got to have the time with them. Do not reduce that time, because if you don't, you're not going to stay connected with them. If you don't stay connected with them, you're going to run into this silent suffering turnover. Well, we've talked a ton about turnover, and we've talked about the cost. I've mentioned the cost of the bad turnover. I want to give you an example of it because I want to show you what the impact is of turnover. And I'm sure you know the numbers, but perhaps maybe you didn't look at it in this way. So this is a real example. This is a real example of one of our clients, what they went through with turnover. They had 300 agents. They had an average handle time of 450 seconds. But the skew between the roses and the new hires was pretty huge. Their roses were running about 30% better than the average. So they were running in at about 311 seconds. And the average time for the new hires when they started was 540 seconds, upwards of 720 seconds. And it took them about 30 to 60 days to ramp up. And they were paying all burdened in $25 an hour. So they were able to reduce their turnover by 15%. So instead of having a 30% turnover, they had a 15% turnover, or in these numbers, 90 down to 45. Well, look at the impact. Look at the change. Their average handle time went from 450 to 420 by reducing turnover 15%. Now, yes, turnover reduced the cost of training them and hiring them and getting them up to speed, but their average handle time changed by 30 seconds. If you've listened to any of the other webinars, if you're out looking right now for a product that we have, if you're looking at post-interaction support, we'd love to talk to you about that and the opportunity to reduce post-contact, post-work time, where you can reduce it. You begin to see the numbers that you can do by reducing something by 10 or 15 seconds. When you begin to look at reducing AHT in the call, in the conversation, it has a massive impact on your organization. In this particular company, they picked up $113,000 of inefficiency by just getting the reps to work, by not having all that inefficiency from the 30 to 60 days, having 45 people, only 45 people going through it rather than 90. It saved them $113,000 there. It saved them $1 million in staffing efficiency, because that 30 seconds impacted their entire organization and the number of people that they needed. Turnover has a huge cost. We all know it has a huge cost, but sometimes we can't figure it out. Sometimes we can't dial it in. So there's a reason to go after turnover. One, because it just creates an environment that's so much better for your company, but there's a financial impact on reducing turnover. So what can you do right now? What are some fixes that you can do today? What are 4 fast fixes you can do right at this moment? Well, the first thing you can do is pulse checks. Starting tomorrow, daily in training and nesting 3 times a week during the early days. I want to know how you're doing, how you're doing, how you're doing, how you're doing. And you can come up with creative different ways to do that. Obviously, we have technology to do all these things, but you need to do pulse checks. If you have to walk around and ask, walk around and ask. But keep the information, study the information, match it up with what you think's going on, begin to look at it, but just do pulse checks as way more than you're probably doing them right now. You can do a pulse check in the morning and a pulse check in the afternoon. Get them in the business of sharing how they're feeling. Get them in the business of telling what it is, what's going on with them and what they think. And don't just ask them how they feel, ask them why they feel that way. Second of all, purposeful connection. Have some sort of a buddy system. Put them together performance-wise, put them together learning-wise, put them together with somebody that's in your center. Celebrate early wins, put people together based on TV shows, based on sports they like, or things that they're interested in, or anything that you can do to build connection. And again, don't forget, I talked about connection with their performance, with their success. They're all having wins all the time, hundreds and hundreds, thousands of wins. You just need to remind them of it and make sure that they see it. I promise you, most people working in other jobs don't have thousands of wins. There's not that much room on their refrigerator to put them. You have thousands and thousands of wins that these folks are doing. And you need to celebrate those and find ways to connect them to their success, connect them to the company where they're finding this success, connect them to the customers who are doing that, which again means a really, really active measurement of customer experience. Again, something we do. The faster you can get your customers' words and the more customer words that you can get into the hands of your frontline employees, the better chance you've got of making them successful and getting them to recognize and appreciate what's going on. Get rid of the bad managers, remove them. If they're the problem, solve it. You can do that in a nanosecond. You can do that right now. Compensation tweak. Most people don't like this, but add micro rewards or bonuses to boost momentum. You know what? Give them a 10-cent raise or a 20-cent raise or a 5-cent raise or whatever it is raise as they work their way through the process. You'd be shocked how many people will stick around for another 10 cents or another 20 cents. And yes, I recognize the fact immediately you're going to want to lower it in order to hire it, but usually when they get on the floor, there's some different successes. Let them gradually get there. Let them feel that they've got something to look forward to. And that's the same way with a future hook. Challenges, gaming, that they've started some legacy that people are going to remember, or measuring their successes. We do a lot of work with streaks and perfect scores and measuring those and milestones and legacy things that they do, or where they stand in training, or something they've done that's unique, or an idea that they've done that's going to go on a board that somebody's going to remember for many, many things. And then just better onboarding, a strong coaching culture. And of course, think about looking at us to help you work your way through this environment. Turnover is one of those unfolding stories that's going on every day and continues to go on every day in your center. Today, somebody's giving you their resignation letter, or somebody's moving through the process, or is just about to leave and you don't know about it. You know what? If you're going to do it, you might as well fight. Might as well fight and be the person in your organization that's fighting turnover. Fight for your people, fight for your culture, fight for better results. Be the person in your organization that has some answers to turnover and has some strategies to turnover. Maybe has a vendor that can work with them on turnover.